Did you all have vegan options? All I saw was pulled pork. Was there vegetarian stuff? Okay, good job, organizers. We're about to start with the next round of talks. I have to say, the organizers did an amazing job, right? Like, can we hear it for the organizer? Because, like, everybody. Because let me tell you why these talks are. The talks are amazing, but also, it's just 2 talks and a break. I've noticed. I love this rhythm because it's like just enough, and then I'm like, okay, let me go like decompress and come back. It's great. Announcements. Announcement number 1: the ring is still missing. Please, otherwise I'm going to take it home. But I was in the lunch break talking with Tanya, who said, wait, no, you missed it? Somebody offered you the ring like this. They're like, hey, I found this. And I was like, oh no, somebody's crying somewhere because I just took it and I'm like, whose is this? Yeah, so we're going to start. I just have another. I've decided to do more jokes in between talks. Just nice. Just to wake you up. So here's one. You're laughing already. You don't even know. What is the most common language in programming? Please, not everybody at once. That's not, okay, well, thanks, man. You ruined the joke. But that's profanity. So Python, fuck, shit. JavaScript, fuck, shit. Everybody swears. That's the, so, okay, you know what? You ruined that one. Next one. How do you, sorry, it's just stand-up comedy now. You don't, last joke. How do you comfort a grieving JavaScript developer? You console them. All right, that's, please, no. It's, we don't applaud these jokes. We roll our eyes instead. That's the, all right, that's enough fooling around. Come on, focus. It's a conference. It's not a stand-up comedy show. Next speakers, I'm so excited to introduce this next talk. You know why? I'm so excited to introduce this next talk. You know why? It's one person. I'm doing this all day, I swear, unless you like. That's okay. I'm so excited to introduce this next talk. You know why?
Why?
See, now you're with me, huh? Okay, so the next talk is a talk about leadership. It's about leadership in the middle of, or in spite of sometimes, processes and tools and so on. And I could use whatever's about to be shared here. So personally, from me, thank you. And from the audience, thank you. Give it up for Mika and Joe.
Okay, yeah. Hi, everyone. I'm Mika. I'm a polyglot backend developer based in Berlin.
I'm Joe. I'm leading engineering teams based in Schwarzach, which is close to Dornbirn.
And we've worked together for about 4 or 5 years in different teams and across different companies. And kind of one topic that's always been kind of with us wherever we go is the question of leadership and technical leadership in technical organizations and companies, especially over the last 2 years where kind of software teams have had to kind of adapt very, very quickly to pretty precarious and difficult circumstances, especially around like remote working and stuff. So that's why, and also those are our Twitter accounts if you want to follow us. So our talk today is called Attitude, Leading Beyond Tools, Processes, and Structure, because we want to kind of talk about the more social aspects of leadership, not necessarily the tools we use to kind of like be leaders, but more the kind of social attitudes and like ways of thinking around leadership that we want to kind of like think about.
Thanks. And now we have a look into the ordinary worlds of engineering teams. There's already dramatic music being played. Thanks. Yeah, so we want to start off with one quote from Matthias. It was a lot of chaos. So yeah, David, who's working with Matthias, might relate to that. But engineering team nowadays, engineers, if there would be like something like a profession hype cycle, they now would be something like maybe pilots or knights have been in the earlier days. They have so much impact on our daily life. They influence how we live, what we do, what we enjoy, You all learned about that great tech stuff that we that people are building in earlier talks. So they have like impact on what we do. But on the other hand, the work and life of a software engineer is like really close to failure. It's easy to introduce a bug. It's easy to introduce a bug to production that keeps you up at night and does not let you sleep anymore. Also, there's so much demand around engineers. So engineers can like choose how they work, where they want to work, what they want to work on, because if their current company is not offering it to them, then there's for sure someone in the industry who will do so. So the question is like, how do you lead such teams? Teams with engineers that yeah, on the one hand are like in this hyped job role, on the other hand like so close to failure, but also who can like choose what they work on. And you can, leading such teams is not easy, and we want to have a look at this today. So we want to conclude this block with this quote: keep believing even when you're upset.
Yeah, so like as Johannes mentions, engineers are quite well acquainted with failure. It constantly kind of haunts us when we're thinking about how to plan and execute kind of engineering projects. Like communication around like complex topics is hard enough already, never mind when the kind of threat of failure is kind of looming over anything you build or deploy. And engineers, as we work close to failure, we build a kind of sense for it, and we create a set of systems and tools to help us hedge against failure and help us kind of cope with it when it happens. This can be stuff like CI/CD, emphasis on testing, but also like social systems like Agile and Scrum and like retros and just kind of generally feedback systems. However, when failure occurs in teams, engineers can sometimes tend to fall back on what they know, which is tools and processes. There's a tendency of, when a failure occurs, there's a tendency to kind of look at it as, well, it occurred because we didn't really have the right system. We should have used this other flavor of Agile, or the tool that we're using to do this particular thing is not the right tool, that kind of thing. And sometimes this can help, but a lot of the times this kind of fall back to thinking about failure in terms of processes and tools can sometimes lead engineers to go around in circles. Sometimes it can mask the problem they're trying to solve, and sometimes, in worst cases, it can like exacerbate the problems that they're trying to solve. When engineering teams go around in circles with this kind of preoccupation with tools and processes, this is generally because of a lack of leadership. Not necessarily like an absence of leadership. Often it's too much leadership of the wrong kind, maybe more micromanaging, or leadership that tries to optimize for things that maybe aren't the healthiest things to optimize for.
So, I mean, that's something that people do like since ever. So when humans decided as a family to go hunt dinosaurs, it was the first team effort in history, probably. Humans have also been building software, not only since Bill Gates did a sit-in with Paul Allen in a garage. Software helped us to fly to the moon. So there must be something. Default processes establish themselves. Best practices are there. Why just not let things happen? It's easy. You have like Agile, you have Scrum, you have all that. Why do you need to change something? Just follow the default. You also have a bunch of senior engineers in your team. They know what to do. It's easy just to follow their voice and like keep going. So why would you want to change something?
Yeah, so one kind of, well, as you can see in this talk, we have a bunch of quotes from different people around the topic of leadership. And you might be kind of wondering where these quotes come from. One of the problems with leadership is that it tends to be a little homogeneous. Leaders tend to elevate people who are like themselves, who look like themselves, who talk like them, who think like them. And this also bleeds into talking and thinking about leadership. I mean, when you go to a talk on leadership, often it will be some guy gets on a stage, he says, this is what I did, this is what I think, this is what you should do, and this is what you should think. And it's a kind of a bit of a self-reinforcing and homogeneous kind of cycle. And we wanted to kind of avoid this. We didn't kind of want to just get on stage and say what we had experienced and what we believe. So instead, we reached out to a bunch of technical leaders within the technical industry. Either people working at companies of different scales, from startups to like big, like multinational corporations, to people working in kind of software advocacy groups like PyLadies. We interviewed them over the course of a few weeks, and they kind of gave us lots of really valuable insight into how they think about leadership, and also kind of gave us insights into where all these different perspectives kind of converge, and like what kind of points they all agree are kind of vital to tech leadership. So for this, we'd like to give a really, really special thank you to the people who gave us time out of their days to talk to us about leadership. Johannes Nagel from SWOT.io, Paul Finlayson-Adams, Matthias Burtscher from Forsonic, Lisi Linhart, who gave a wonderful talk earlier today from Storyblock, Yu Li from Alibaba Cloud, Jessica Greene from Ecosia and PyLadies Berlin, and Rats Schweiger-Schuti from Delivery Hero. So yeah, thank you to all those people again for their time and their insights on this kind of tricky topic.
When we talked to those people, it was really interesting. We asked them like, hey, how do you lead teams? What's important to you? What's important to your teams? And at the essence, they all had like a similar vibe, a similar attitude to that. But they all approached it from a different angle. So let's have a look into that. At first, Johannes Nagel, CEO of SWOT.io, he said that leadership ultimately starts with the hiring process. So they have the owners of the most important things of the company, of the values, of the vision, being involved into the hiring process right away. He's CEO and he takes care of hiring the people. They have an HR team, but it's only supporting them. And that allows them to hire people who not think alike. They manage to come up with a quite diverse team, which is pretty impressive, but who like pull in the same direction. And he says that really helps when it comes to execution and being productive. Ras also said something like that. He said his ultimate goal is to hire smarter people than he is. And because he said his job is about leading, but ultimately the stuff that has to be built, other people need to take care of. Then we talked to Paul. And Paul came up with this nice analogy of how you build a leadership team. So it's not only enough that you hire the right people, you also have to hire them in the right way. And so he says you have product leadership, people leadership, and tech leadership. And it's important that all of those is providing the vision for the respect for the specific topic, and that they also need to work together. So he says a game changer for him was to see you're not only leading the team that you work with, but in the company that you are as a leadership team, you also have to be aligned. And being aligned also means respecting the opinion and the responsibilities of the other leaders. Then we talked to Matthias, and Matthias said, leadership is about enabling people, so about unlocking their potential. You heard that very pointed quote from Matthias, which he started off. To be honest, it was a little bit out of, no, it was not out of context, but it was maybe too pointed. But he said that for them it was a game changer when they came up with this leadership role that was somehow even more set up like a coach. So it should help unlock the potential that is already there within the people, help them to speak up, help them to take decisions on their own, and just accompany them. Lisi said she's in the fortune position that she's also like the architecture lead. She's very knowledgeable when it's what is happening on the tech stack, stack, but she said it's like really important to keep the back of the team free. So to speak out to the stakeholders, to make sure that they are aware the position of the team is in, what the team is capable of, and what the team can do. To let the team focus on delivering good work. You said behavior, so it's following this approach that behavior is triggered by motivation, ability, and prompt. And he says that when you hire the right people, they will have the skills and they will have the abilities. And he says the prompt is there. There's always something to do, and you have product managers and you have customers and everyone asking for things that need to be done, but you need to align on motivation. Where do your peers want to be like in 5 years? What do they want to work on? What do they want to achieve at the company, but maybe also in their life? And he says that this is like the trigger to identify conflicts right away. And if you then have those conflicts, you can solve them before you're like knee-deep into a project and there's no way back. Ras says that it's important to him to be open and provide feedback. That's something that you should do as a leader, but that also your peers should do to provide feedback. And you as a leader need to take care that there's a culture within the team that allows to do so. He also says that he wants to like stay really close to the team. We heard the word empathy in Lise's talk earlier. It's like really important to know where the team's at, how they are doing, and to also be able to like influence them. And he says that culture evolves over time. So be there, be present, work with the team, and also be a role model, and then the team will follow and culture will build. Jessica said that leadership is a goal of leadership is being helpful. So to support the team, and there is like this understanding of supportive leadership, and she wants to like say, okay, what does the team right now help, and also understand the role as such. And also Lise said that she's like driving a lot of things in her role as leader when no one feels responsible for. So like to crumple your shirt up and dig into the stuff and just do it what needs to be done. So to sum that up, leading is about hiring the right way, setting up a proper leadership structure, like truly enabling your people, keeping the back free, aligning motivation, and being helpful and inclusive.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of these insights from different people in leadership positions, and it's kind of, we were curious about how these kind of lessons about leadership arose. And often it's not through success. It's usually through failure and through challenge and through hardship that these kind of insights into leadership kind of come about. For example, a lot of these insights have come about through essentially communication failures, where communication within teams and between teams fails or is obscure. This can lead to misunderstandings between engineers and teams, and then will make engineers themselves reluctant to make decisions because the communication about decision making is kind of obscured, and decisions that are made might impact the engineers in negative ways, so they kind of build up a reluctance about making decisions. Similarly, also, a lot of these lessons came about through when teams attempted to expand the leadership, to grow leadership, and found this was like way harder to do than they anticipated. A lot of the time, engineers within teams don't really know what it would take to be elevated to leadership positions, like what kind of skills they need, what kind of things they need to grow into, what's expected of them. And this kind of obscurity about what leadership entails and what people look for in leaders when they're elevating people to those positions tends to exclude people based on things like background and like time constraints and focus constraints, because people are not necessarily very clear or sure about what being a leader entails when they want to grow from just being a regular engineer to being maybe engineering leadership. One tempting thing in those kind of failure modes to fall back on is to basically just be like, well, we have the senior engineer. The senior engineer will make the decisions, and the engineering teams will just do what they say. But as Paul says in this quote, if you do it that way, then what you end up with is, you know, empowered senior engineers and not empowered teams, completely like disempowered teams, which is not really what you would like to achieve as a leader.
So how do you get this in place now? What did those leaders do to come up with leadership that works for them? At first, they decided to act. So they looked at the team, they listened at the team, and they realized, okay, we need to do something. And then they realized that they need to empower their team to make decisions. So they unblocked them. So we got two quotes in this direction. And it's about like finding the right voice at the right time to ultimately decide. So this might be a junior engineer, this might be an intern who just heard something at university, who just was at a conference, listened to a talk, learned something. And it's about finding the right voice at the right point in time and then letting them decide. But it's also about when a decision is taken, stepping back, and if it might go in the wrong direction, trusting the team that they will identify failure and they will be able to fix it. So have like feedback loops in place, make sure that the team is learning, so such that the worst thing is that could happen is that at least they learn. And Rats mentioned something that he used to do with his teams, to put the team into a place where they are uncomfortable. And at the end, they will say that they have learned. And that's not something that like only leaders could do, but that's also something that everyone can do in their day-to-day life. So try something new, try something which feels like you're the wrong person at first sight, but at the end, you will get so much back from this and you will learn so much. What's also important is that when you take those decisions, or the team takes decisions, that it's transparent, so that you like can refer, well, at this point we did it that way, so you're able to reference that, and when you're like in a retro and analyze what happened, then you can look that up. And it's also important that you move stuff from private channels into public channels. That provides the opportunity that for sure everyone is able to learn that, but also everyone is able to jump in and say, well, I just saw this and I just read that. And if you enable this like in a respectful way and you foster a culture of respectful conversation, then this will be really helpful to the team.
Yeah, so say you decide to kind of take on some of these lessons and enact them in your engineering teams. What could happen at the very early stages? Engineering teams, especially when it comes to things like engineering culture and decision making, are a bit like a ship that's like moving in one direction and has like a lot of momentum behind it. When you make these kind of changes, you're essentially trying to like nudge the ship to go in a slightly, nudge the ship to go in a slightly different direction. What can happen at the beginning is that, especially if you have a focus on autonomy and autonomous decision-making, is that teams will start making decisions that might feel a little arbitrary. They're kind of finding their feet and kind of getting used to being able to make decisions in areas and at scales where they weren't able to do so before. You might find that these decisions that these teams are making are difficult to align with kind of company or organization level goals. And they might be made more on the lines of, say, like a gut feeling rather than kind of an overall kind of coherent direction. In those cases, it's up to technical leaders to be role models and basically try and embody the kind of the the style of autonomous decision making that they would like to see in their teams, especially when it comes to aligning every team's decisions in one kind of direction, whether that's a company direction or an organization level direction. And one thing that might happen during these kind of engineering culture transitional kind of early steps is that people might leave. Like, everyone has their own kind of preferred working style. People like working like with different levels of autonomy, different levels of decision making. Some people might, you know, prefer working at the older kind of level rather than kind of this new kind of bucket of responsibility dumped on their lap. And like, you know, it sucks when people leave because of these kind of cultural changes, but it, you know, it happens, and you can also just use it as a kind of ability, an opportunity to kind of grow the team in the direction that you want.
Okay. So it's a long process. When you start this approach, it's not something that is done like in a day or something. We heard Matthias talking about 1.5 years. You need to consider this also as an agile, as an iterative process. Take your time, step back, think what worked, what has not worked, and improve it over time. But like, trust the team. So I think that's also a quite powerful quote, that the team is usually able to function, and the more you trust it, the better decision it takes, and it's often about context. So a team does not take unreasonable decisions, it's just that they're lacking context. And it's also about like identifying the barriers. So what's like stopping the team from taking the right decisions and taking the lead in the right moment of time? And it's about breaking that down. And once you got that in place, the team will just run and execute. And it will even be better if it's like aligned with the goals of the bigger company, of other teams, and if they are transparent to them, then it comes to its full power. It's also like just letting everyone speak out in the team. So who cares about title? Who cares about ego? It's about the arguments, it's about taking the right decision. And there's also one interesting aspect to that leaders don't want to take all the decisions. So micromanagement is something that is like really awful and puts everyone in a dependency where leaders just have to decide upon everything, but also teams are not able to function because they are depending on every decision, and they have to wait until the leader has taken all the other decisions that are queued up. Does that mean that leaders don't have to take any decisions? No, sometimes leaders have to forcefully step in, take the right decision, and maybe like also realign the team. But those are conscious moments in time where they use like their position to take such decisions. And usually a team will also understand that and follow if it's done in a respectful way, and trust is in place.
Yeah, so what kind of things do we think that everyone should kind of take away from the people that we've interviewed and our kind of general stance on technical leadership? Firstly, the first lesson is to fix the hiring process. Engineering and engineering culture and leadership culture is an ongoing process. It's made and remade on a daily basis by the people that you hire, the people that you work with. You should hire for those kind of values, hire for the kind of leadership values that you want to see people embody, not necessarily for technical skill. Technical skill and abilities can be nurtured and grown, whereas values and attitude is a lot harder to shift. Fight for really diverse teams. Fight for people who maybe are generally excluded from these kind of leadership elevation kind of processes, and ward against like homogenous decision-making culture.
Next, establish real leadership. Don't micromanage. Foster social systems which let your team decide, and also organization that helps you to lead such teams. And work hard, like really hard on that to make that happen.
You also need to create the right understanding about leadership, both for the leaders and also for the people who are working with them. You need to establish boundaries and red lines so that people have a good intuitive sense of when they're expected to act and make decisions and when they're expected not to. You need to use the power that you have as a leader to grow the people underneath you into leaders as well. You need to make space for people from different backgrounds, levels of commitments and focus, and help them become leaders as well.
And like truly enable your team. Give the decisions back to them. Let them decide, trust them. Make sure they have like a process in place to repair things if they go the wrong way. But just enable the team.
You also need to keep your team's backs free. Good work on complex problems requires lots of space and lots of space for thinking. And teams find this very, very difficult to do if the looming threat of failure and pain is constantly hanging over their heads and is threatening to crush down on them at any moment. It's your job as a leader to protect teams from those kind of like pressures.
And align motivation. So, yeah. Sorry for that hanger. The words don't help. So have like open, honest conversations about the motivation of the team. Try to identify conflicts early enough and resolve them. This will help the team in later stages to not even things let become a problem.
And lastly, be helpful. As a leader, you sometimes need to make a call or a decision for the rest of the team. It's up to you to identify when those situations come up and to kind of take action on them quickly and resolve them. But by default, this shouldn't be what you're doing. By default, you should be in a facilitator role because you want team members by default to be able to act and function autonomously on their own without someone above them constantly making decisions and calling the shots for them.
So with a productive and empowered team that is able to execute, that is able to take their own decision, is able to drive the product forward, is able to show their expertise where they are experts, you will have overall a way more successful way of building the product, building your projects, whatever. But it's not only that, it's also allowing you leaders to focus on the bigger picture, to focus on vision, to focus on values, to sometimes take a step back and rethink a little bit where you're at, what are the right next steps. And that's something that will come if leadership is turning that way. And yeah, important to like rethink the whole thing. Johannes Nagel said that he was using different words, but we switched it a little bit to nicer words. So he's feeling uncomfortable if the process and the team remains the same for years. So rethinking and reconsidering and adjusting and like living the agile process also helps here.
Yeah, so at the end of all this, what would we like you to take with you? First, as a technical leader, your job is to shape attitudes, not kind of obsess over tools and processes and structures, but to act as like a shepherd or a steersman to shape people's attitudes and kind of push them in a direction that leads to kind of more healthy team dynamics. Engineers take dozens of decisions every day, and when we say the word leader, leaders themselves might like to think of the kind of archetypical leader as someone who stands astride a group of people and like calls a command and everyone kind of follows. And in technical leadership, like this just does not work. This like engineers value autonomy, they value being empowered, and if you kind of adopt this posture of like command and direction, then people will just leave for a better company. I mean, that's the world. Your job as a leader is to act as a kind of glue between team members and teams, to act as a kind of facilitator for autonomous decision-making and kind of empowerment around kind of, decision-making. Sometimes the teams underneath you will make decisions that you disagree with, and that is fine. You'll have to learn to live with it. teams need to make decisions that they think are the right ones, not the decisions they think you think are the right ones. You want to enable your teams to make these decisions, and you want to give them space so that they can grow, so that they can run under their own momentum and kind of find their own direction. You need to unlock their potential, and once you've unlocked their potential, then the whole process of working under a technical leadership, leading people, making decisions that are aligned in a kind of general direction becomes way, way more fun and like more pleasurable to work under, and isn't a kind of micromanagement nightmare. And like Raz says, why not just have fun? Thanks.
That was an incredible talk. Thank you. It was a really, really nice talk. And there's so much there, so many principles for me, and I'm sure the rest of us to learn from. Thank you again, Mika and Joe. I want to invite some questions we can take 2 questions. Anybody? I see nothing on Twitter, but that's just because the internet sucks. But okay, I have a question while you're thinking. I was curious, and this is for either. You know, you've probably worked with a leader, at least one leader, where you're like, wow, right? Something made them special. So my question is, condense like one thing that a leader did that left an impact on you to this day and maybe even inspired this talk. What is it?
Yeah, I think the one thing that I've taken away from like a leader who I really valued was that they gave people the space to grow. So when they hired people, they didn't necessarily hire them because of the bullet points on their CV, like I've worked with React for 5 years, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But they kind of looked for people who can learn and can grow and kind of developed cultures within teams, between teams at the company level that promoted growth and learning. And I think that's something that like really stuck with me and like helped me, you know, become the engineer that I am today. So I'm very like grateful for that kind of attitude.
Thank you. Hope everybody's taking notes, because in a way, everybody's kind of a leader, right? Like, and if you're not a leader yet, you will become one. Like, it's just the natural progression of things. And hopefully, you become a leader that people say these kinds of things about. Questions? Yes.
How do you think business leadership can learn from technical leadership?
That's a good question. Can you repeat his question just for the live stream and then?
So the question was what business leadership can learn from technical leadership and vice versa. So I think that on the one hand, it's like it should grow closer together. So there should be more understanding, like from the business side and from the tech side. What I really don't like is like the separation of, okay, this is like business and this is like tech leadership, because at the end, with the tech that you build, you have to make a business running. And on the other hand, your business won't run if there's like no tech. And in tech companies for sure, so there might be other businesses. Yeah, but so what can they like learn? I mean, for sure, it's like this whole iterative process that is like really baked into a lot of engineering teams, like stepping a step back and thinking what is the next step that we can do, how can we improve the process. I think that's something that is important, and also I think the world was pushed towards async, and it was pushed towards documenting stuff, writing decisions down, and making it available to everyone. And I think that at least what I experienced, was not always the case for business leaders. And I think that's also an important aspect. On the other hand, I think tech leaders, they sometimes maybe like too much focused on tech and forget about the product, forget about the business behind, and like also like look over that Tellerrand and see what's happening there, and at the end, like who's paying the salaries and how this all is running.
Yeah, you enjoy that? Good. I agree. Thank you for the answers. Thank you for your talk. Let's hear it one more time, everybody, for... Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We're going to have the next speaker come up. Did you want to add something for you?
Yeah, and the whole thing that we talked about, we also assembled a blog post about that. We need to get the sign-offs of all the people mentioned, so we're still working on that. We are now even in some corporate processes, I think. And but once they all agree, we will also publish this on a blog. And yeah, follow us on Twitter to stay up to date there. And also, any feedback is welcome in person or on Twitter. Thanks.
Awesome. Let's hear it. Fantastic.